Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be talking about my auxiliary light setup and how I managed to get all of it for less than 50 bucks, and I'll show you exactly what I used and how you can do the same. Stay tuned. All right, let's jump right into it. Like I said, I managed to get my entire auxiliary light setup for around $50. This V-Strom 650 XT is a bit of an adventure bike, and for that reason, I didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars on expensive auxiliary lights, which I'm sure would work great, but they're likely to be broken. You know, this bike will be dropped, it'll be bumped into things, and if I'm going to have to replace auxiliary lights, my train of thought was I'll try to get a decent option that's affordable, and I can replace them every year or two if I have to. I got all of my pieces from Amazon. So let's start with the lights. These are the aux beam 4-inch LED lights. They're advertised at around 1800 lumens. Many people, myself included, believe that's probably overstated, but they're still very bright and ample for what I need. It's a bit bright out, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but the bike's off, so that doesn't work.
It's okay.
I went with the option that comes with the wire harness, and it comes with about a 2-meter long wire harness, as well as a small relay and a switch. I'll talk about the switch a little bit in the future, but I didn't end up using the switch that came with the lights. But the 2 meters of wires helped a lot, running the wires back to the battery underneath the seat. Next, let's talk about the mounts. These are the Lighttronic 1-inch universal fit rotating mounts. I was really looking for a pair of rotating mounts. You'll see that many of them are a solid piece, and that limits the configuration that you can put the lights on. So you'll see here, I was able to rotate these mounts, to be able to mount my lights perfectly level. So having that rotating feature is really handy in my mind. So you can see here the rotating feature, which allows you to rotate to get the level of the light perfectly straight. It also has numerous holes which allow you to adjust how far away from the mount you want to attach the lights. Now, because I mounted to the crash bars, you'll have to be careful about the diameter of your crash bars. As I said, these are the 1-inch mounts. I was able to measure my crash bars and they're a 1-inch diameter, so these fit great. And at the time of purchase, these mounts ran me about $20 Canadian, and that's for a pair of them. One of the things to keep in mind with the cheaper lights that come from Amazon is many of them seem to have waterproofing issues. For these aux beam lights in particular, when I was looking through the reviews, I found a couple people talking about how they got some fogging behind the lens, or what seemed to be a little bit of waterproofing issues. So what I did before mounting these is I actually unscrewed the caps on the end and took them apart, and I put silicone all around the outside edges, anywhere that water could potentially get in the light, in order to try to improve that waterproofing. And so far, I haven't had any issues. Another thing to consider when you're thinking about the setup for your bike, if you're mounting on crash bars using the same mounts or a similar style mount that I have, is think about where you can mount the lights on your bike. If you can see on mine, I wanted my lights to be somewhere in this area, but that means I had to put these mounts on the crash bars in this area, which is one of the furthest bits away from the bike. The downside to that is if I drop this bike, or if I happen to get in a crash, the mount which wraps around the crash bar on the outer edge here, is likely to be damaged or worn away in the event of a crash. Of course, the lights and the mounts were cheap enough that I can easily replace them, but it's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about your setup. The third part of my setup is a switch. I opted for this Twidec 12 volt 20 amp rocker style switch, which is supposed to be waterproof, but I'll get to that in a bit. As I said earlier, I didn't opt to use the switch that came with the aux beam lights, mostly because the mounting system would have been a little bit weird. All it came with was a switch that you had to stick somewhere on the bike. I wasn't sure about the longevity of that, so I opted for a separate switch. When I bought these, for a pack of 5, it was about $20 Canadian, so each switch came out to around $4 each. So what I ended up doing here is I took off this piece of plastic that I wanted to mount the switch onto, and these Twidec switches can be slotted into a 20mm diameter hole. So I drilled a 20mm diameter hole into this piece of plastic. The switch slots in, and then it says that these switches are supposed to be waterproof, and it has a little bit of a rubber shroud that sits over it, but it's pretty movable, and I wasn't confident that it would be waterproof as is. So I took a bit of silicone and I went all around the base on both the top side and the underside of the hole, coating the bit where it mounted into the plastic with silicone to make sure that no water could get through. All in all, I'm really happy with my setup. I think it looks great. So far, it's been working perfectly, and for $50 to $60, you really can't go wrong. However, of course, for $50 to $60 using products from Amazon, there is a noticeable quality difference, especially when you compare it to an option that would be $100, $200, or $300. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's always nice that if the bike does go down and I lose a light or I break one, I'm only paying $30 to replace one as opposed to $200 or $100. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and that some of you found it helpful. If anyone's interested in using some of the products I use in my light setup, please consider checking out the description. I'll have some Amazon affiliate links. And if you use one of those links to purchase any of the products that I use in my light setup, it doesn't cost you any extra at all, but it's a great way to help out the channel, as we'll receive a small part of each purchase using those links. All right, guys, catch you later.